All right, everybody, welcome to the Thursday edition of Locked On NHL. As always, we have some power rankings to get to, which we will do that momentarily. And I think Adam and I are just getting a little bit too frustrated with the other hosts of Locked On NHL Network because it's the same old, and I think it needs to change.
It's time to put everybody on notice.
Oh, it's happening.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host from Locked On Avalanche, Chris Maselli, and joining me as always on the Thursday edition, Adam Denker from Locked On Lightning. It's Thursday. It's more power rankings to get to. And if you were listening on YouTube, you know that we're not too happy because it's like, why is this happening? Who did the Florida Panthers pay off within the Locked On NHL network for them to keep sticking around at number one? I don't understand it.
You know, better off who is Armando Veliz, host of Locked On Panthers, paying
Right?
off to keep them in the
I
top
don't know,
spot.
man. Is he have like multiple logins where he just, go? Is he voting online and then sending in like a ballot? Is he sending in a Chad because he's in Florida? Is he sending in one of the old Chads?
I'm
Oh
sure
my
my listeners will love this reference, but stop the count. Stop the count. We got to stop it now.
Oh boy. We're gonna move on from that. But we are going to discuss obviously some rankings and some news stories obviously going on around the league and how that will affect the rankings maybe going forward. We'll look at the Jack Eichel situation. We're recording this before that game, and it's against my boys. So as soon as we're done recording here, I'm going to watch that, obviously. So we don't have, and these rankings don't reflect, that game, obviously. But we'll talk about him coming back and what that means for Vegas going forward. Talk about the Tyler Toffoli trade to Calgary, just trades in general, how those will affect the rankings and wherever else things tend to go on this Thursday edition. But let's start with those rankings. And there we go. Bam. There we are. All right. There you go. So your Florida Panthers are still number one. And by all accounts, they only beat out the Avalanche by a single vote. The Avalanche are still knocking on the door. I think last week they beat them by 2. So one host has come over to the Avalanche side since last week. But Panthers at 1, Avalanche at 2, Lightning at 3, the Hurricanes at 4, Maple 5. No change there. The Penguins move up 2 spots to 6. The Rangers move down a spot to 7. The Wild move up 3 spots to 8. Predators stand pat at 9. The Capitals drop 3 to 10. So that is your top 10 ranking. And yeah, I think we're not too thrilled, obviously, about the Panthers being at number 1. Clearly, I'm not, because the month the Avalanche had in January was just out of this world, and they lost their first regulation game Tuesday to Dallas. So I think they should be clear cut number 1 without a doubt. And, the Panthers, I'm not saying they shouldn't be a top 5 team. They should be. But I think the way that the season started with our teams being 1-2 is where it should be right now, if you ask me.
Well, I would just like to preface what I'm about to say real quick is, I obviously, whoever's watching this on YouTube, that by now that these are not the updated point totals right now as of Wednesday.
Right.
We do have a different one on Instagram that has been posted. So with the updated points now, really, I think that at this point in the season, and we have spoken about this pretty much on every episode when we've done this, is yes, these rankings are reflective on the previous week's performance by each team. Having said that, I think now at this point in time, the other host, because I also like to point out once again, I do not vote. That the other 31 hosts, at least, or at least 30, because I know where Chris is ranking these teams.
Yeah.
Is I think we have to look at these teams as what they've done thus far this year now. And points don't lie. The Lightning and the Avalanche have the 2 highest point totals in the league. And I think we have to start looking at it like that. I get it. The Panthers have been hot all year. They've been in first place in the division for a majority of the season. But you can't sit there and tell me that the Lightning have had less of a schedule than the Panthers. They play the same people. So and like you said, the Avalanche have been on a roll at home the last 16 games. So what are we not seeing there on the ice?
I don't know. Again, we're not trying to make it seem like the Panthers need to be in free fall. They're not.
No.
They're up there. But I think times have changed enough, and I think maybe it's just the easy thing to do. It's like, Panthers are still playing well. We'll just put them at number 1. That's just my impression of what other hosts are thinking. But I mean, it was widely known what the Avalanche were doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They weren't just skirting under the waves of just obscurity. Like, they were on a roll. And so to me, I think, again, our team should be number 1 and 2. And look at the Penguins. Penguins, although they have 50 games, they're one of only a few teams that have played 50 games. 1, 2, 3, I think 4 teams, real quick count, that have only played 50 games. But they got 70 points too.
Yeah.
They're number 6. Again, not horrible, but this is where I just like, mixing it up a lot when it comes to the rankings. So I did put them up at 3.
Yeah.
That's where I had them.
And I also like to point out, I mean, if you look at this top 10, are the Leafs really better than the Rangers? And I know that, and on paper, of course, they are.
Right.
But of what we've seen this year, I mean, the Rangers won in a shootout last night. We're recording this Wednesday, so Tuesday night, won in a shootout against the Bruins, who, we came on the previous show and said without Marchand, they're not going to be, what they are, especially with Bergeron out with a concussion. But still, that's a tough game, regardless. But the Leafs haven't really overly impressed me. Are you mean to also tell me that the Bruins are better than the Blues?
Was that? Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No. Definitely not.
So
no.
A lot and to echo your point about mixing it up. I think what it really comes down to, Chris, and this is, my conspiracy theory. I wish I actually made a tinfoil hat before this. I knew I was going to bring up this point. I think this comes down to jealousy with the other host. They see how good our teams have been for so long, especially my boys winning the last 2 cups. And I'll have to admit, I've had it pretty easy here on Locked On Lightning, being able to talk about 2 cup runs since I started.
Yeah. I mean, you are the only Stanley Cup winner in the existence of the NHL side of Locked On. So
I think this comes down to jealousy, and they just see how we're just flourishing, we're thriving and surviving out here in the NHL landscape. And now you have a young buck team who's ready to upset the balance here in the Panthers, and everyone's on the bandwagon.
Yeah, I mean, if I didn't do a show with you and I didn't, know you on a personal level, I would just subconsciously hate you. So and then vote for the Lightning as maybe 29. They're not worse than the Kraken. No, I'm kidding, but maybe there's some of that there, some bias going on. I would be interested to know where what's his name, host the Panthers put
Armando.
Yeah, Armando. I'd be interested to know where his voting is.
We got to have him. We got to have him on as a guest.
We should be doing that. We should be having other hosts on for this and spill their votes. Who's like the one guy who didn't vote for Jeter? Like, who are you?
I guess what we should do is we start from the bottom up. So let's get those Canadians hosts on here first and let them explain themselves as to why they deserve to be at 31 instead of 33. Right. Ooh, I mean 32.
Right. All right. Let's hear from Bet Online. We'll go full screen with that while we're talking about Bet Online. And hang on one second because we got to get this. Here we go. Bet online. Obviously, football season is over, but basketball is full steam ahead with both pro and college hoops. So from the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the number one spot for all your sporting bet needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news for this season, and it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for the NHL, boxing, and UFC odds, right to Olympic coverage and information. So head on over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and all of the action. BetOnline.net, it's where the game starts. All right. Like we said, we are recording this before the Vegas Colorado game. Jack Eichel making his return to the ice. So we're not going to get into the whole LTIR bit. If you want to hear about that, please tune into my Locked On Avalanche. We did a crossover with Tony, who hosts Locked On Vegas Golden Knights. Fantastic talk with him. So tune into that if you want to get into all the, how we feel about the LTIR bet. You know how Denker feels about it because his team benefited from it too. Hey, it's a loophole. It's not illegal, but it's annoying. So, but what do you expect from Eichel? Do you expect him to just pick up like day one? This is, again, before this game is going to start. What do you expect from him after we're done recording this? We go watch that game. Are you expecting him to just jump back right on the ice and be the Jack Eichel of old? Or is he going to need to really test that thing out in his spine and his back and to get back into hockey mode?
You know what? It's really hard to really say definitively whether he's going to go out there and just be Jack Eichel from the opening puck drop, or he's going to go out there and maybe have the yips for a couple of periods. I mean, we really don't know this. This was the whole conversation surrounding the surgery to begin with, that this has never been done for a hockey player. And yeah, he comes out, he says he's feeling fine. We've seen video of him skating around, and by all observations, it looks like that he's a normal, thriving hockey player who's ready to go out there and perform. But a lot of people, I don't think, have taken into account the mental side of this. You go out there and he gets his first hit along the boards, and it may not feel right the first time. He may, unfortunately, play scared for a little while.
You don't know.
I'm not saying he's mentally weak or anything like that, but I mean, you had an injury where your head was practically detached from your body. So, we're not going to be too harsh on him, but I don't know, man. I wouldn't be surprised either way with this. Now, I'm going to throw a question at you with this now, since it is your team, with your prep for that game, and I'm sure on your crossover as an Avalanche fan, and as well as other upcoming teams that will be playing Vegas. Are you at all intimidated by the fact that Eichel will be on the ice, or is this just another game against Vegas?
For tonight, anyway? No, because we don't know what he's going to be. I'm not expecting, he hasn't played in a long time. So am I sitting here expecting him to just jump out on the ice and take over a game like, Nathan McKinnon can, like Connor McDavid can? Absolutely not. So no, I think it's good for the sport. It's exciting for Vegas fans, getting him in a trade, and it's an exciting moment. It's a big moment. It's gonna be on national television. But at least for tonight, I'm not afraid of it, because I don't know really what you're gonna get from him. Ask me next year, and in 2 years, and in 3 years, and in 4 years, it's gonna be a task. It's gonna be a daunting task. He is going to be a problem for the Avalanche and everybody else in the Western Conference for a long time. So yeah, you got to look to that. But and even it maybe not even for next year, maybe even for the playoffs, because you would expect him to be game ready and game shape, and he works out all the kinks, and he's okay taking hits by then. But for this game, No, I mean, I want to see, and maybe I'm going to be wrong, and he comes out and he's 100% and he scores a hat trick, but I just don't expect that to happen. So, and they're down Stone, and Mark Stone has been an Avalanche killer lately, as of late too. So I feel, again, this is where, before the game starts, so I feel pretty good going into the game, but this will probably be the only time I feel good about facing Jack Eichel, because from here on out, he's just going to keep improving and getting healthier and healthier, you would think. And then Vegas becomes a real problem.
Yeah. He is projected to start on the first line center position, which is very interesting. I would have at least maybe eased him into it, actually throw him on the third line.
And I asked Tony that when we did the crawl. I said, do you expect him to get, like 10 minutes, 11 minutes, just to ease him back at least for a game or two? Or is he getting thrown to the Wolves first line? And he was like, oh, I fully expect him to be in there 20 minutes. Like, wow. Okay. Wow. We shall see. I don't know. But, it, and another thing we talked about was how they are going to navigate their salary cap issue. And it's nothing that we have to get into right now, but the Avalanche, the Knights, the Golden Knights are going to be a interesting and fun team to watch on how they get all of these guys under a salary cap. I just don't know how they do it without shedding a lot of players. But they seem in their early stages of their franchise to figure it out one way or another. And they're going to have to this time. They're going to have to.
And yeah, absolutely. And how that relates to the standings now, if we get a stereotypical Jack Eichel performance, not starting tonight, but going forward, I would be shocked if the Knights don't crack the top 5 by the end of the season. I mean, adding a player like that, and then you have Robin Leonard coming back soon too.
Well, when is he coming back? That is
true.
I don't know when he's coming back. Stone ain't coming back. Stone is not coming back this regular season. It is impossible for him to come back this regular season. So, will they be good? Yeah, but they're not going to be 100%. And I think who else you have on LTI? I think it's Martinez is on LTIR.
Yeah, you got Martinez, you got Whitecloud, you got Stone, Leonard. I mean, and Martinez is another one that has a lot of money that's going to hit up against the cap. So I mean, we spoke about it last time. I mean, how do you shed cap without losing a little bit of what got you to the point in the division? Because everybody forgets they got off to a slow start. And And now they're starting to make some headway and look like your stereotypical Knights, and it really is. I honestly don't think Vegas thought this out when they made the Eichel trade.
Oh, I don't think so. I really don't. And because why would you trade Marc-Andre Fleury, who has a $7 million, right? Seven. I think it's 7 or 8. I think it's $7 million cap hit. And the reason you traded him was because of cap reasons.
Yeah.
And then you go out and acquire Jack Eichel, who is $3 million more against the cap. It made no sense to do it. They did it anyway. They're lucking out for this season. Yeah. But long term, it is a nightmare. It's a Vegas golden nightmare. Just thought of that. But
copyright it.
Yeah, I should. And I being an Avalanche fan and in my conference and knowing that they are, they're someone that you're going to have to deal with. I'm watching with arms crossed for sure. So we shall see. All right. Let's also talk about Tyler Toffoli getting traded to Calgary. And what does that do to Calgary? I mean, we're talking about Vegas. Maybe once Eichel gets comfortable and gets some games under his belt and becomes the Jack Eichel that we all expect him to be, Vegas maybe moving up some spots. Can Calgary do that now with that acquisition?
I mean, Tyler Toffoli is one of those guys where it seems like almost every trade deadline, I blink my eyes and he's on a different team.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, right now, I don't know how much of a big deal how much of an impact he's going to be able to make with this team as Vancouver is 5 points behind 3 other teams that are tied for 55 points in the Pacific Division. So they have a lot of ground to cover, and those teams are Edmonton, who looks like they're starting to wake up, Los Angeles and Anaheim, who have both been playing well all season. So does Tyler Toffoli put you over the hump into the wild card spot? I don't think so. I think that you're going to need a lot more than the Tyler Toffoli gravy train rolling into Vancouver to get you into the playoffs. But I mean,
really,
I don't know. I just think that I wouldn't be shocked if and I say this completely not being aware of what Vancouver's cap space looks like, but I think that they're going to have to make another move if they're legitimately serious about, about going into the playoffs. And
Calgary, you think?
Excuse me. I just said Vancouver. I meant Calgary, who's sitting in first place. I just said an entire thought. So all of you who are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and just roast me in the comments.
I was wondering where you're going with that.
I lost my mind there for a minute. So
we're talking Calgary, but you're thinking Vancouver.
I don't know why I was thinking Vancouver, but Calgary. I think this is a good trade for them, as I just told you.
You're reading one thing and thinking another. So
exactly. So no, but great trade for them. But I don't know. I go out there and prove that this trade is worth what you gave up for.
Yeah, he gave up a good amount. A lot of picks for, I don't know if they were all in 1 year. I can't remember off the top of my head if they were all for 1 year or spread out over the next couple of years. But I don't like, Calgary was hot early. And then they kind of fell off for a little bit. And for some reason that little lull that they had has really, like, in terms of our power rankings, prevented them from moving up. And I don't get that. It's just like one of those teams that I think they were at 1.3 or 4 when they were red hot early on in the season. And they've been stuck in those high teens pretty much since then. And, as far as record wise, they're a point up on Vegas. And again, don't pay attention to the ones that we have up here because those were not updated. But they're a point up on Vegas, and they have 2 games in hand on Vegas.
Yeah.
And Vegas is a couple spots ahead of them. And like I said in the beginning of the segment, like, we're talking about Vegas ascending up. Watch out for Calgary in terms of moving up these rankings, and just for the remainder of the season. They are a force, and really nobody is kind of like paying a ton of attention to them. And I think that they should be.
Yeah. And I think that we're going to see if they go out there, if this move with Toffoli translates onto the ice, I think we're going to see teams like the Bruins, who I don't think that they're going to be able to hold on, missing 2 of their top players and their goalie situation being what it is. And the Leafs, they're going to have to fall at some point. Are they a bad team? No, but are they necessarily one of the best in the league? By no means.
Well, let's talk about, and those are 2 good examples, like the Leafs and definitely the Bruins.
Yeah.
The Bruins are, they're going to make the playoffs by, just because the talent level is not there in the East as it is in the West. Like, there's going to be a kind of knockout, drag out punches in the West to get in. In the East, it's pretty much already cut and dry, the playoff spots. Do they make a move? Like a team like the Bruins, are they buyers, or are they just going to sit there, maybe make a minor depth trade or 2, knowing that they're going to be in the playoffs, and just doing that is enough for this year anyway. And knowing that you're probably not going to go that far in the playoffs, although anything is possible, I get that. But do you make kind of big moves and maybe get some rentals when you're going to be a wild card spot, likely, to really not advance that far in the playoffs? I don't know. I think the Bruins are in a really weird spot right now.
Yeah, they're in a weird spot where they're one of these teams that team is similar to like Washington, where they rely heavily on their veteran presence, and that's something that has kind of plagued them in the playoffs over the last couple of seasons. So I think they're going to still remain very, very stubborn in that ideology, where I think they're going to make a death move, like you said, but I don't think they're going to go out there and trade for a guy like a Clayton Keller or, someone that is a top scorer and on a team that's looking to sell. I think that really what they're going to do is just get someone that they could throw out there, barring some sort of injury. They do have guys that are day to day. I mean, in the National Hockey League, day to day could be coming back tomorrow or 2 weeks from now. So, it's one of those things that I think they're waiting to see, and we'll probably see them make a trade right at the deadline as it's ended.
I mean, if they feel like they can get maybe one of the bigger fish in the trade market, and that will just catapult them through the playoffs, I think you go for it. But
right, but who's out there? What is the move really that they can make? Because they don't really have a lot of money to play with to begin with.
No, and I don't know what their draft pick situation is like either. So yeah, I don't know. And do you really? And I don't know what their prospect pool is like. I don't know if that's high up in the league. I don't follow their minor league team, obviously, but is there anything there that other teams want? I don't know. They're kind of like a little bit of an aged team.
As of right now, they only have $1 million to play with in cap space.
Okay.
So, and this season they have a first, a second. They got a pick they got from Calgary. They have all their draft picks, so it's not like they got stuff they could play with.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know if there's any. Do they have anybody that's like high dollar values that's coming off the books next year that somebody else would want as just a rental? I don't know. I just think they're in a weird spot.
The guys that are coming off the books next year, those guys that you kind of want to keep on your team. I mean, Patrice Bergeron, we know he's untouchable.
Oh yeah. No,
we got Curtis Lazar and we got Anton Blythe. I hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, but so, yeah. I mean, you have guys on this team that are pretty much locked up for the long term, and the guys that are really coming off the books sooner, you don't want to get rid of those guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about a team like the Maple Leafs? You mentioned them; they are usually active, and they usually will. They're not shy to make some moves, so you maybe would expect them to.
Yeah.
And you want to look at the teams. That's what you do at this point in the season. The teams are at the high end are the teams that are going to be the buyers. The Avalanche. Well, they should be. They at least are saying they are. The Panthers are probably well. I think the Minnesota Wild are going to be aggressive. And I talked to Seth, Locked On Wild host, and the Avalanche and Claude Giroux seems to be like the sexy talk right now.
Yeah.
And that could definitely happen. But talking to Seth, I think the Wild are a wild card when it comes to bringing in Claude Giroux. If it doesn't go to Colorado, I think he's going to Minnesota. I think Minnesota is going to put a lot of emphasis on the trade deadline.
Well, I think Minnesota, the way they've played this year and their management kind of taking a shift and being that reserve with some of the moves they made and being very aggressive. I think Minnesota is now in kind of like a state where they need to be aggressive because it's all or nothing. I think what we've seen from Tampa the last couple of years, trading away their first round draft picks. I mean, obviously it's not big names. I mean, Blake Coleman, yes, who was in the trade a couple of years ago. Huge part of that cup run. They don't have to trade necessarily for a superstar, but Claude Giroux is that kind of guy, just like what Blake Coleman was with Tampa. You could slide him into a third line if you really need to. I think he'll play a little higher than that, but he is that kind of guy that potentially could make or break a playoff run, whether it's finishing in the second round or lifting Lord Stanley at the end.
Yeah. So these are things we're going to be talking about for the next month, while trades maybe happen every once in a while and maybe pick up a lot more, obviously, as the trade deadline approaches. We'll kind of assess those and the impact that they'll have on these teams in the power rankings going forward. So let us know any trades that you're anticipating that could really improve a team. We'd love to hear about it. Send it over to lockedonnhl@gmail.com or find us on Twitter as well and send us a message. Because this is when it gets interesting. This is the part of the season that I love.
Yeah.
Like playing GM couch GM. I love it. All right, everybody. That will wrap it up for today. We'll go widescreen if you're watching on YouTube with the power rankings one more time. And he is Mr. Adam Denker, host of Locked On Lightning. Chris Maselli, host of Locked On Avalanche. Thanks for listening to this Thursday edition, making it your first listen of the day. And we'll see you guys next week.